Tansei, I'm Krisanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Saskatchewan's ombudsman is speaking out after public complaints were heard about the province's response to the wildfire crisis. She says numerous evacuees in Saskatchewan feel abandoned by their government. Sharon Pratchler says it is rare for her office to speak on provincial response issues during a crisis. She says immediate action needs to be taken to support evacuees during this traumatic time. She asserts that displaced evacuees wait for days to hear where they will be provided shelter and food. Some are hungry, sleeping in cars, and without access to their prescription medication. Pratchler has given the province a list of more than a dozen solutions to meet evacuees' basic needs. Her office will now conduct a systemic investigation of the province's wildfire response, evacuation, and provided services.
As a legislative officer, my goal is to focus on solutions, not blame. We have a list of solutions that are needed right now, immediately, based on what we're hearing from Northern residents and other people who are reaching out to me. The solutions involve immediate responses and resources, and at least some information of the long-term solutions, even if they're not perfectly known at this time. People want to know what is going to happen to them. Are they going to have a place to live in the future? Are they going to have a community? Are they going to have a job?
Now to Squamish in BC, where residents remain on high alert because of a raging wildfire burning close to nearby homes. The flames are burning out of control on a steep terrain along the Sea to Sky Highway, and a local state of emergency remains in effect this week. CTV's Craig Krause has more.
One helicopter after another, all working to suppress the flames from spreading further into Squamish as crowds of locals watch on.
Never ever seen anything like this before, especially how close it was, to us, right here.
A feeling of helplessness as the blaze rips through the mountainside, triggering an evacuation alert for nearby neighborhoods.
This is going to be the huge challenge for our crews on this fire. There's going to be places that are inaccessible to work.
All hands on deck as more than 24 firefighters along with air support tackle the western and southern flanks, the areas posing the most danger to the community.
Really scary seeing it actually sort of come to your doorstep.
And I'm feeling it right now. It's hard to talk about.
Officials say the blaze was sparked Monday afternoon in an area with many hiking trails. But as for a cause,
we haven't had the chance to investigate the cause, but it is most likely a human-caused fire.
A fire spewing thick smoke into the valley, leading the Squamish First Nation and the mayor urging caution.
Squamish Alert will notify residents directly if the situation changes for their property.
And some help could be on its way. The BC Wildfire Service is expecting temperatures to cool over the coming days, along with more humid conditions. But regardless, anxiety in this neighborhood is palpable as they watch the fire burn. Craig Crow, CTV News, Squamish.
Cumberland House Cree Nation in Saskatchewan is suing the province for failing to protect what it calls its most vital resource, the Saskatchewan River Delta and North America's largest inland delta. The First Nation situated in north-central Saskatchewan near the Manitoba border filed a lawsuit against the province for infringing on its treaty rights to maintain its way of life. The First Nation says the vital wetland is in an ecological crisis and drying up because of industrial and agricultural activities upstream, including hydroelectric dams, irrigation, and fertilizer-intensive farming. The First Nation says animal and fish populations have plummeted and the water is no longer safe to drink. An environmental consultant who is working with Cumberland House says the delta provides an irreplaceable life source to the broader climate and environment there.
You know, the delta provides our way of agriculture, and it's dying as well. You know, we're trying to coexist with the province, and moving forward, we need to work with the governments that are here. So, you know, we're not going anywhere.
The province says as the claim has not yet been served for now, it will not be commenting. Canada's Auditor General has released a report on Indian Act status applications on Tuesday morning. The report finds the existing government system is cumbersome, slow, and inefficient. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Registration under the Indian Act plays a central role in the recognition of First Nations people under Canadian law.
But Auditor General Karen Hogan says the federal government is not living up to its end of the bargain. A report released at a press conference in Ottawa on Tuesday finds 80% of status applications took Indigenous Services Canada more than the 6-month standard to process. There's a backlog of more than 12,000 applications. And for First Nations who assist in the processing of applications, the funding formula has not been updated in 3 decades. The report finds there was an increase in status applications of about 58,000 between 2019 and 2024 due to amendments to the Indian Act, but it finds funding to ISC to process these applications has also increased. Either way, Hogan says there is no excuse for such long delays and backlog in processing.
Taking 16 months to make a decision is a long time for someone to be waiting to find out if they can access benefits that they have the right to under Canadian law. And I think many would ask themselves, if the Canadian Public Service can process an important document like a passport in a timely way, why can't they make a decision under the Registration Act in a timelier way?
Equally alarming is the lack of government resources invested in First Nations that are assisting ISC in processing applications. Almost 30% of First Nations with a community-based registration administrator receive only the minimum of $5,000 per year.
But part of reconciliation is to transition all of that to the communities, and without proper funding and then the ability to be proper trained, First Nations communities aren't going to be well equipped to take this on. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, not just about increasing the funding to these partners, but to also make sure that training and capacity is created before things are transitioned over.
In a press release, Indigenous Services Canada Minister Mandy Golmasti welcomes the report and says the department is making improvements such as moving to a digital application format and the introduction of legislation in the Senate to address remaining discriminations in the Indian Act. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. And you can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. 6 Indigenous leaders have recently been honored with special recognition. We'll tell you who they are and where they're from when we come back in 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. 3 First Nations people, 2 from Saskatchewan and 1 from Ontario, have recently been recognized by a number of universities for their tireless work in their fields. Cree journalist Connie Walker from the Okonee First Nation in Saskatchewan was recently awarded an honorary doctorate by Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec. She is also a recipient of the Pulitzer Prize, a Peabody Award, a Canadian Screen Award, and was named one of Time's most 100 influential people for her reporting on Canada's residential school legacy and MMIWG. Former Chief Cadmus Delorme from the Cowessess First Nation was also recently presented with an honorary Doctor of Laws from Athabasca University in Alberta. He was previously the student president at the First Nations University in Regina and championed community-led solutions for Indigenous education. He went on to become Chief of Cowessess and spoke nationally about the importance of reconciliation following the discovery of 751 unmarked graves in Cowessess. And lastly, renowned textile artist and Indigenous rights activist Alice Olson Williams from Trout Lake, Ontario, received an honorary Doctor of Letters from Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario. She has created more than 450 quilt pieces that have been on display in art galleries across Canada and the US, including the Royal Ontario Museum and the National Museum for the American Indian. Her art portrays the deep cultural history Indigenous communities have with nature. Her message to university graduates is to love yourself and love others, and that will help you go far. And a new set of Canada Post stamps set to release later this summer will honor and recognize 3 longtime elders from 3 separate First Nation, Métis, and Inuit communities. All 3 have helped preserve their community's culture and language. They include Tsuut'ina elder Bruce Starlight, who was a language commissioner for his community, received an honorary doctorate from Mount Royal University in 2023, and helped found an organization that preserves the language of Tsuut'ina people. He also helped produce dictionaries and recordings that explain the historical stories of the Tsuut'ina people as well. Educator and translator Julia Ogana from Uluhaktuk Northwest Territories has also worked tirelessly to promote and protect Inuit culture and traditions. Over the years, she has created language programs and promoted knowledge of the oral history of the Inuit. She also helped publish 2 books in Inuktitut and also received an award for outstanding achievement in language revitalization and a meritorious service medal for her dedication to language and culture. And lastly, Sophie McDougall from St. Louis, Saskatchewan has also worked to preserve Métis culture and language. 2 years ago, she received the Order of Gabriel Dumont Gold Medal in recognition of a lifetime of service to the Métis. She passed away in 2023 at the age of 95. The new Canada Post stamps will be released on June 20th, just 1 day before National Indigenous Peoples Day. And this is the 4th of its kind of unique stamps featuring Indigenous excellence. Just outside of Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, the community of Behchoko has wrapped up its elections this week and has elected its first ever female chief. On Monday, the votes were in and Bertha Rabascazo beat incumbent chief Clifford Daniels with a final tally of 600 to 353 votes. The former chief executive officer of the Tlachtcho government, Rabascazo, said that as chief, she will address drug trafficking, security, and housing issues in Behchoko. After her win, her supporters had a drum dance in celebration, and she addressed the crowd with gratitude and reassured them that change is coming.
I want to assure people that change is good. It's not bad, it's good. That's how we move along. It's how you manage and you bring people with you when you make these changes. And so, elders...
And the Yellowknife Museum's newest exhibit is featuring traditional and contemporary beadwork from Tlachtcho Dene artist Matthew Vuxen. As APTN video journalist Bruce Dela Cruz reports, the exhibit showcases all things beading and how traditional art is evolving in the 21st century.
So that's what that means, symbolism of that. And this is the electrocution chair.
Matthew Vuxen, a Tlachtcho Dene artist based in Brantford, Ontario, gives a tour of his new exhibition at Yellowknife's Prince of Wales Northern Heritage Centre. Titled Etsonatsili, or We Sew Beads, it showcases his traditional and contemporary beadwork from the past decade. From smaller designs to modern sculptures, every piece is woven with precision and has a story to tell.
There's also some heavier pieces, I call them tools of oppression. The concept behind that was about justice and also about how, you know, those objects were not here before contact period in North America, and so they would have been alien to the Indigenous people. And that story, that one means a lot to me because that's a real...
Traditionally, in Dene culture, beading is done by women, but that hasn't stopped Matthew from pursuing his art.
Traditionally, men were busy doing other things, right? Women are in the camps, and men would be on the land hunting, right, for survival, so they could feed the family. So they don't have time to bead, right? But yeah, like in contemporary times, people pick up art, right? So
Matthew credits his mother, Celine Buxton, as one of his first teachers. Having been taught beading by her family, Celine shared the story of when Matthew decided to take a greater interest in this art form.
But then one day, he did ask me a question himself. He said to me, "What's going to happen, Mom, if my sisters don't pick up the beadwork? Maybe it wouldn't get passed down." And then he answered that question himself. I didn't give him the answer. He said, "I guess I better learn how to do beadwork."
Matthew emphasizes the cultural significance beading has for Dene people and how family histories are threaded with each bead.
I think it's a form of legacy for families because each family would have their own designs and crests, and they would tell each other apart on the land. And you know, it's just a beautiful way of how they express themselves in their environment. So.
You gonna do a wedding dress?
I gotta find a bride first.
If you missed the opening ceremony, have no fear. We Sew Beads will be on display until December 2025 here at the Prince of Wales Northern Heritage Centre. For a full schedule, be sure to check their website at pwnhc.ca. Bruce De La Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Thank you, Bruce. We now want to tell you about this week's second web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, do you understand the federal legislation that promises to speed up projects of national interest? Your answers are yes, a little bit, or no. Go to aptnnews.ca/polls to have your say. As more First Nations across the prairies help with the return of the buffalo, one First Nation filmmaker made it her mission to document it all for a feature on a new feature film. Filmmaker Tasha Hubbard is up next. Stay with us. On the east, St. John's 15, Halifax 17 and sun. Rain in Happy Valley Goose Bay at 10, Cartwright 12. Saquonay 16 and sun, Gaspé 14 and sun. Sarnia 16, Sault Ste. Marie 11 and sunny there. Partly cloudy in Wawa at 9, Elliott Lake 12. Puckadowagan 8 and partly cloudy, Thompson 4 and partly cloudy there. Sunny in Winnipeg at 13, Brandon 10. Swift Current 13, Saskatoon 10. Smoky and Middle Lake at 14, La Ronge 11 and sun. Showers in Grand Prairie at 22, Fort McMurray 18. 23 in Medicine Hat, Lethbridge 23. 24 in Bella Coola, Cabell River 21. Prince George 24, Prince Rupert 14. Watson Lake 21, Whitehorse 17. 16 in Yellowknife, Wrigley 22 in showers. 20 in Fort McPherson and sun, Colville Lake sunny there 16. Baker Lake 10, Chesterfield 12. And Clyde River 1, Aglulik 2. Thanks for staying with us. Acclaimed Cree filmmaker Tasha Hubbard is racking up awards for her latest documentary, Singing Back the Buffalo. The film follows Indigenous peoples and others who are trying to rematriate to the North American plains they once defined. And over the weekend, Singing Back the Buffalo took home the Documentary Feature Award in honor of Alanese Obomsawin at Imaginative 25. We spoke with Tasha earlier this week. Here's that interview. Tasha Hubbard, thanks so much for being with us, and congrats on the film and all the acclaim it's receiving. Can you tell us a bit about your new documentary, Singing Back the Buffalo?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is a film that I've been wanting to make for a couple of decades, since I started in my film career. And, I just wanted to wait until it was the right time, until I felt like I was in a place to make a film that was worthy of the buffalo. And I started working with the late Narcissus Blood in 2014, and sadly we lost him the next year. And, so I started again in 2016 and just followed the story as buffalo started coming back in a new wave of buffalo return. And, we just dug in right after the pandemic, and we had our world premiere in February of 2024.
Right on, that's good to hear. And the documentary, like you said, was years in the making. Can you tell us why you are so passionate about this documentary and this story?
I would say, about 22, 23 years ago, I was taken just outside of Regina to where there was a buffalo stone that had just been recently uncovered. And I was, just so fascinated and felt so connected to it. And, ever since then, I've just been really curious about buffalo and curious about our relationship to them, what they teach us, as they're our teachers. And I was just starting to rise in my film career, so the two, really converged. But, I did my academic work in buffalo consciousness and connection, and, this is the first time that sort of my film work and my academic work came together, so it feels really special.
And Tasha, can you talk about the efforts that are underway to bring back the buffalo and how important that is to the people in First Nations and right across this country?
I think one of the many things we carry, is the loss that we experienced collectively with the buffalo's near destruction. And yet those ties weren't broken, and our relationship to them wasn't broken. And so when we bring them back, when we bring them into close proximity to us again and renew that relationship, it helps us in so many ways that I think sometimes we don't even understand. But they love us, they want to help us, and we become stronger, when they're close to us.
Top way, yes. And finally, Tasha, what do you hope viewers take away from the film, and where can people one day watch it?
Yeah, we know we have difficult stories, and those are important stories to tell. And I think as a filmmaker, I've had that sense of responsibility to tell those tough stories. And we also need these stories that look towards hope, and look towards the future, and look towards stories that we can celebrate. And so I want people to watch the film and feel that connection to buffalo, feel committed to doing what they can to bringing them back. One of the main sentiments in the film is that the buffalo took care of us as Indigenous people for so long, and it's our turn to do the same for them. There's a short version of the film that's on the nature of things. It's available to be seen now on CBC and CBC Gem, but the feature version of the film will be available on APTN sometime in the fall, and we don't have our dates yet, but I'm excited that the film will be able to be seen across the country, by the viewership of APTN.
No, that's great to hear, and thank you for the APTN plug. Thank you, Tasha. We'll have to leave it there, and congratulations on your new documentary.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Grayson.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Wednesday. We're back again in a few hours for your evening newscast. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.